now, as Sam kind of alluded to, we are going to talk now a bit more globally, but with still an eye on localization. It's literally going to be a talk about localization versus globalization. Should have just said that. We are overrunning. There's no room for waffling right now. Instead of carrying on like this, I'm just going to bring in one of my favorite guys, James from Midas, who I believe is hosting our next panel. Yes, there he is. He joins us from the stratosphere, where he's currently spending time. Over to you, James, for the next panel.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, really, really pleased to be here. Really, really insightful panel, which hopefully this will follow on from that, really, and hopefully give some topics for discussion. Again, as alluded to by Sam in her panel, please put some any questions you have into the chat. We'd be delighted to get people in as much involved as possible. So for those that don't know me, and thank you very much for that delightful introduction, Dan, I'll get you to do it again. I work for Midas, which is the inward investment promotion agency for Manchester. So we're charged with securing significant levels of investment for the region to create and safeguard jobs, but also to promote Greater Manchester on a world stage, hence why I'm probably chairing this panel session. So we've got 4 fantastic speakers, and thank you everybody for sort of going on. We've got Frank, Head of Marketing at AZO Network. We've got Phil, who is Senior Director of Immersive Content at Discovery Education. We've got Victoria Braddock, International Marketing Director at Marketing Manchester, and Louise Day, Assistant Director of Marketing at Manchester Central. Now, what would be really useful just to sort of set the scene here, just literally 30 seconds to a minute, if you guys wouldn't mind just doing a very brief introduction to those in this session who may not know your organization. So Frank, can I come to you first?
Yep, of course. Can you hear me? Yep.
Yep.
Cool. My name's Frankie. I'm the head of marketing from AZO Network. We are a marketing science platform specializing in science, engineering and healthcare. We originally came to Manchester via Sydney, via Macclesfield in Cheshire, and then we realised that we needed to move to Manchester. I'm sure we'll get into the weeds of why we did that later, but we've been in Manchester for 4 or 5 years now, and James and Midas, the team at Midas, have been instrumental in making sure that we met the right people, we were able to move into the right buildings, and make the right moves generally strategically from a company perspective.
Great, thank you, Frankie. As if I've written that for you. Fantastic, thank you. Phil, over to you next.
Hi, Phil Birchnall from Discovery Education, Senior Director, Discovery Education, part of the Discovery Network. Discovery Network, the largest non-fiction media company in the world, but Discovery Education also serves 53 million pupil accounts on a daily basis in 53 countries around the world as well. So just starting and basing ourselves in Manchester to establish studio presence here. And I'm personally Manchester born and bred, been working here all my working life in various guises.
So we got someone on the inside, as I keep saying. Fantastic. Victoria?
Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm the Director of International Marketing at Marketing Manchester. So Marketing Manchester is the agency that is charged with promoting Manchester on a national and international stage. So we get to take Manchester to the world and deliver activity in places like China, the US, Europe, Middle East. So yeah, that's what we do.
And last but not least, Louise.
Hi there. So I head up marketing and communications for Manchester Central, which, for those of you that don't know, we are a Victorian railway station turned international convention centre. So we host events of all shapes and sizes from across the world, across the country. We're probably very familiarly known for hosting the likes of the Conservative Party conference, but also we've been the backdrop to the Ninja Warrior filming. We've done all sorts. So yeah, very broad range of events that come through our doors.
Great, thank you very much for that introduction. So my first question I'm going to go to is Frankie. As you alluded to in your intro, I've worked with AZO ever since you came to Manchester some 4.5 years ago, and the growth of your business has been fantastic and continues to be so, which is very promising to see. I guess with relation to sort of taking regional identities global and that whole local versus globalization agenda, what would be really interesting when I was thinking about this panel session is getting some insight from some companies that have sort of lived and breathed that to that extent, or are currently doing so. So can you talk a little bit about how you've seen Manchester adapt over the years and sort of better position itself on a global stage since you've been here?
Yeah, sure. Funnily enough, when we moved to Manchester, we created a blog piece and a company update and press and the rest of it, talking about how we're coming to Manchester to expand the team. And part of that blog piece was creating an infographic about the history of science and engineering in Manchester. So if you actually look back, it was 3 years old, but it's fascinating that we've got the first canal, the first intercity railway, the first place to split the atom. There's well, over the Industrial Revolution and then through the 20th century and now into the digital revolution, it's always had a history of innovation, which is one of our key values at AZO Network. And again, I suppose it's that kind of the cultural values which drove the decision to move into the city centre, because we got to, in East Cheshire, we maybe had a catchment area of 1 million people in Cheshire. But then we realised that, you move to Manchester and all of a sudden you've got access to 7-8 million people from around the northwest. We get people coming from Sheffield, from Leeds, from Liverpool. And it's ultimately that was the reason we moved into the city centre, was to attract, hire and retain the right talent. Because that's our biggest expense or overhead is the people, because we've got to attract the right people who represent the company and they're basically the mouthpiece towards the clients. So it's been an incredibly important strategic move for us, because we're able to go from, it ripples on throughout the company now, because we're able to increase. We're on a 26% compound annual growth rate for the last 8 years in terms of sales increase, and we've got big plans on the horizon as to where we're going to take the company next. And I can tell you I've only ever had one job, and it's been with AZO Network, and that's over 8 years. It's one hell of a journey that we've been on. But and Manchester has been right at the core of that, particularly in the last 4.5 years, as you say.
And on that piece as well, how have you found that move to Manchester has allowed you to sort of attract more clients in terms of developing your pipeline and portfolios?
Yeah, good question. Again, it comes back to the people and like the culture of the company. And like I say, I'm a bit sort of biased almost, because I've only ever worked at one place in my senior career, and that's here. But the culture ripples throughout the whole company. We've just hired another 8 recruits, so that's a 24% increase in headcount. And just out of interest, like if anybody else has been hiring, it's been the talent pool. We've been flooded with an embarrassment of riches. Like one position I had 200 responses for, and we could have hired one of 20 people, but I had to go for, well, I ended up going for 2. So I went back to the CEO and asked for more budget, because now the talent pool of young, enthusiastic, driven, digital native talent is unbelievable out there. So with an eye on the next 1 to 3 years, once we get through COVID, we're gearing for some serious growth after that.
Fantastic, and thank you for that. And it's been a pleasure to work with you guys and continue to sort of support you guys in your growth plans going forward. And it's another great sort of success story in Manchester, and it's what I sort of wanted to bring to this panel. And so sort of moving on to Phil now. As part of this, huge brand of Discovery, which is a great brand, but obviously yourself being a Mancunian at heart, you've got that sense of pride, and sort of following on from the previous panel session, we've spoken about this in terms of the US side of Discovery perhaps not having that understanding of what Manchester is about. So can you talk a little bit, because I know we have offline, talk a little bit about that perception that there was historically, and sort of how that opinion was sort of altered?
Yeah, sure. So it was very interesting, actually, because when, to Christian's point, most of my colleagues think I'm based in New Hampshire. So, Manchester by the sea. So, I get meeting requests at, 10 o'clock at night and things like that. And it's taking some time to educate them. I'm in the original Manchester. And of course, they don't think we're the original either. But anyway, that's a whole other educative process that I'm engaged in. But when Discovery acquired my company, which was based in the Sharp project, late 2018, early 2019, with the intention of setting up an immersive studio, creation of virtual, augmented, mixed reality content. And we are doing that. But things changed rather quickly when our Chief Product Officer came to visit the Sharp project in Manchester. And within the space of an hour and a half of his first visit, he'd seen the world's fastest robotic high-speed camera-based photography, a world first. He'd seen companies that could spin on a sixpence and talk about all kinds of digital content. And he'd seen filmmaking facilities. He'd seen one-man bands, one-person bands, people innovating, people passionately talking about content, just people coming out of the woodwork everywhere, just interested to just sort of say hi and say, we can do this, we can do this. And within a day or so, we weren't just setting up an immersive studio in Manchester, we were setting up a hub, and we were shifting our development and production facilities, which are based in, have been based for Discovery in Hammersmith in London for quite some time. And that's moving to Manchester. And of course, things have been interrupted, but those plans are still in action. And in fact, over the summer, we've invested in some SME based in Sharp projects as well. And being able to start that work regardless and actually make some films over the past 6 months. And we've made those films in a fraction of the time. And it has to be said, a fraction of the budget, of course, that other filmmakers would have done those things in. And what happened was that really what they saw was that Manchester is like a massive Swiss Army knife. So when in New York, Chicago, where production is based, most of the production is based, and in Twickenham and in Hammersmith, what we found was that you get one company that can do this, one company that can do that, and everything very inflexible, and then you get a company based in Sharp, based in Orbita, based somewhere in Manchester, could say, yeah, we make films. Oh, you're interested in podcasting? Yeah, we do that too. Oh, we can market that for you. Oh yeah, we understand social media. Yes, we do this, we do. And it would just be like, okay, so, and we get the benefit of all of that synergy, that work, that cross-working and everything. So it's been a huge, huge hit. And in fact, plans are accelerating. And as you know, I can't mention a name, but we now have one of the world's largest comms providers looking to invest a significant sum of money into some real world-leading immersive content coming over the next 12 months as well, which will be based in Manchester and will involve companies probably in Sharp in Manchester as well. So Manchester companies benefiting from this, which is really important to us.
Fantastic. And you couldn't really get a better segue into my next question to Victoria around sort of positioning on a global stage, then one of the world's leading, as you say, telecommunication companies investing in something in Manchester to sort of position the growth of a company the size of and brand reputation of Discovery going forward. So fantastic story, and thank you for that. So Victoria, I think moving on from that, clearly Marketing Manchester's role is to promote Manchester and market it as a thriving business destination and tourist destination. And I guess historically, leaning towards the previous panel, we've used the historical heritage. Frankie touched on it before around sort of history of innovation and the cultural values, etc. So, but actually, I'm originally from down south. Sorry for everyone on the call. But actually, I've even still got friends that talk about, oh, Manchester's just sort of music and football and that sort of thing. So it's about being proud of sort of that element, really. So I guess on that basis, how have you seen in the world of sort of Marketing Manchester and that whole destination marketing of the city region? How have you seen that message evolve over the past few years? And, this nod to our regional identity, is it recognized and does it matter on a global stage?
I think wherever we go around the world, we always get recognized for various different things, whether it's if we're in India, we get recognized for our industrial heritage. If we're in China, we'll get recognized for the strength of our universities. We always get recognized for the strength of our sport. The second thing somebody will say to you when you introduce yourself as being from Manchester, they ask you if you're a Man United fan. So in whatever market we go into, you know, we're hugely lucky that people have some base knowledge of what Manchester is. So for us, it's always an upsell. So they already have some knowledge, which is based on our sport, our academia, or our history. But then what our job has been over the past 25 years is to be making sure that we're positioned as a vibrant destination, as a place to live, work, invest and study. And I think some of our asset base has been on an enormous journey over the past 25 years. So if we look at what's happening in our universities, you know, as a place to live, the city centre is you know, we can see the tower blocks going up on a day-to-day basis. So for us, it's building on those baseline messages and making sure that people understand the quality of life, and it's the vibrancy of the nightlife, it's the culture, so that we've got that balance. Coming back to Phil's point of being the Swiss Army knife of cities, we want to make sure that people recognise us not only as a fun place to live, but that you're also going to get a great job that's going to pay you well to ensure that you have that richness. And I think, you know, the cultural sector is also helping us tell that message globally. Things like Manchester International Festival, our art galleries, you know, things like Park Life, that all helps people to understand the quality of life and the vibrancy and distinctively why Manchester and Mancunians, it's a great place to live. So yeah, we've got a baseline of knowledge, which is always easy for us to build on because we're not explaining Manchester from the start. So
yeah. And I know when we were doing a little bit of sort of, you know, pre-meeting around this, we were talking about sort of layering up with other thematics around some of the specific sectors that we have here of expertise. You look at sort of healthcare and life science, the heritage again of industrial and manufacturing, the e-commerce centre of sort of the UK, also goes without saying, relevant to this audience, the sort of creative and tech skills as well. But also we've also got things like, you know, global indices around the Economist best city to live. Surely that helps to push that messaging as well.
Absolutely. We undertook a piece of work last year where we looked at 500 indices and where Manchester ranked within them. So what we're looking at is a way that we can track our global growth, and also looking at specific areas that we want to make sure that we're being recognised in. So being recognised as one of the best cities globally for students. We're very high ranked for millennial appeal because of the vibrancy of the city. Being in resonance best 100 global cities for us is absolutely brilliant. And there's certain indices where we want to do well, because that's coming back to the previous panel when we were talking about, you know, the whole fundamentals of what it means for Manchester. There are certain indices that we watch more closely and we make sure that we're engaging with them so they've got the true picture of what's happening on the ground in Manchester. So yeah, it's hugely important that a lot of global cities are changing, especially the rate of growth in places like China, Middle East, India. You know, we could find ourselves slipping down those ranks if we don't actually make a concerted effort to ensure that people understand the benefits. And as we grow and recover from the current situation that we're in, they'll be even more important that we're recognised.
Yeah, so the messaging there is build upon what you have as a regional identity and what you have that works well, and then layer up going forward. A great message to go to the world with. Moving on to Louise, last but by no means least, great introduction that you've given around sort of Manchester Central. I'm sure the majority of the people on this session are aware of it, but I guess following on from sort of what Victoria said around, as I say, that marketing piece, clearly the city centre, the unique position that the Manchester Central has as a city centre conference centre plays its part too. So how has that developed its own ecosystem around that, a different way of looking at those events piece and fringe activity, but also how has it managed to sort of help you to attract more prominent conferences here, which in turn puts more eyes on Manchester?
Just picking up from Victoria's point around kind of key and high growth sectors and Manchester's performance in some of those sectors, and you know, coupled with that very closely is the strengths within the universities. From a Manchester Central point of view, when we start looking at attracting those big international events, actually the first thing that those international organisers want to know about is the destination. They want to know what the city has to offer. They want to know that actually, you know, is there synergy with what they're looking to get out of their conference programmes. And Manchester performs incredibly well in those realms, particularly, I think you touched on, James, you know, those high growth sector strengths in relation to life sciences, biomedical, advanced manufacturing, engineering. It's those kind of hooks that really get people starting to talk about Manchester and its capabilities to host these kind of congresses. And I think, you know, second to that, then they want to know that there's a convention centre within the city and the infrastructure there to allow them to physically, logistically bring that event to the city. So that's why we, as the convention centre, work incredibly closely with Marketing Manchester, because it's very much a partnership effort in terms of attracting those big international conferences. You know, there's a lot of work that goes into identifying the right fit. And part of that is kind of founded on what we call an ambassador program. So that's about kind of identifying some of those, you know, those academic, those real kind of leaders in their field that exist within the city that we can work with to then take that message of the city back to their respective networks and associations and get them to start talking about Manchester on our behalf and the value that can be generated from bringing their association congress to the city. And I think, you know, we can't underestimate the value that collaboration, you know, it's a theme that's come out quite a lot this morning already, but of the value that collaboration with our kind of public-private partners brings as part of that. And I think to your second point in relation to the physicality of where we sit as a convention centre, you know, whenever we're asked about what Manchester Central has to offer, be it to a national, local or international organiser, our location in the heart of the city is the one thing that really grabs people, because it's that connectivity, it's the ability to travel and the ability to get there, you know, easily. And Manchester's kind of transport network and the air routes and the connections that can bring people into the city plays a massive part of that. But equally, they want to know that there's the hotel accommodation within walking distance on the doorstep of the convention centre. And, you know, we talk quite openly about the fact that there's something like 2,500 hotel bedrooms within a 5-minute walk of the convention centre. There's over 10,000 across the city. And that's so critical to those organisers that are bringing their delegates to Manchester for 2-3 days. And they want to really create that kind of campus style environment because they recognise that's when they get the most out of their event. So it's not just about what goes on, you know, within the convention centre and the core conference programme. It's actually, as you touched on, it's the ancillary stuff that starts to wrap around that. So the fringe events, the formal or the off-programme events where people can start to get together. And I think that's where we see some of the really interesting you know, results coming from conferences. It's the ability to kind of make those connections and develop them as part of the programme.
Yeah, and no, that's brilliant, and that sort of lends itself. I've got about 5 minutes or so left on this panel, so I'll start to wrap up shortly. But I thought it was quite relevant to bring Frankie back into that conversation. And short plug, Frankie has put a link to that that infographic and that article on the chat. So if anybody's interested, look at it. It is really, really good. But on that, Frankie, Louise mentioned around some of those key sectors and, you know, playing on the heritage and the history and sort of the quality that we have in those sectors. Obviously, life science and sort of materials and engineering are core to your business. So that will have had a sort of a huge attraction for you guys to sort of be based in Manchester.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, you've only got to look at Bruntwood, SciTech, you know, the sort of the networks available and the kind of incubators, the hubs, there's you know, Daresbury, Alderley, Science Park, City Labs, there's loads of them. I can't obviously remember all of them off the top of my head, yeah. But it's so we work heavily in well, anything in science and engineering or even healthcare, and it helps massively that, you know, we're able to go and host a roadshow down at the City Labs or one at Alderley Science Park or go to Daresbury and do that. And you've got access to that talent. I suppose that's all fed by the universities. You've got, is it 4 or 5 quality universities in the city, and it's incredibly important that, yeah, okay, I talked about the talent before, but then the client base is out there. We've got 420 odd clients, and we're looking to make, how do we make that 4,000? So that's the ambitious, hairy goal for us, and we're going to do that by getting, you know, closer ties with these organizations, with people like BioNow or Bruntwood SciTech. And yeah, it's incredibly important to have a close proximity, physical proximity to those organizations.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, I think just sort of one final point before I start to wrap up. I think to your point, you mentioned, Phil, around that, and it has been talked about on previous sessions and panels, around that collaborative nature, around the fact that that is part of the DNA of what makes this region so special. You mentioned about potential plans going forward around some investment which might bring more collaboration to some of the more SMEs in the Sharp project, but also the fact that you're working with them. Can you talk literally for like 30 or so seconds around that?
Yeah, I mean, collaboration is everything. Yes, we've got the SME collaboration, but also I'm going to segue across a little bit, actually, just to what Frankie was saying, because with your help, James, we've been engaging with MMU, universities, and that is absolutely fundamental, because they're not just outputting, they're listening, and they want to collaborate too. And that means that actually it's all about the pipeline of talent, the way resources are funneled into our sector is now far more intelligent, and that is huge, and everyone benefits from that. The SMEs we're working with, the universities themselves, and of course the young people moving through that pipeline as well into whatever careers they work with. That has really caught the attention as well outside of the UK. Brilliant.
And what a great sort of final point to finish on. So I guess the last thing for me is, and any of you can sort of answer this. Would any of you have any sort of particular advice on how either the businesses on this call or further afield can further enhance and further position and push Manchester's regional brand identity in some of the aspects that we've got further on a global stage? Yeah, go on, Frankie.
Yeah, just a real quick one. The talent pool out there is phenomenal. So I'd get into it before it gets hoovered up, and spare no well. Obviously, you've got to be able to afford it, but if you can take that calculated risk now, COVID's not going to last forever.
I would echo that. Yeah, I would echo that, and also COVID is leveling as well, and it's a good thing that it is, because we don't want prices. We don't want Manchester to be seen as the place where you can do everything for half the price as you do it in London. We want things done at a fair price so that businesses develop at a fair rate as well, and COVID is leveling that.
Yeah, we almost made it through this without mentioning the C word, but yeah. Any final points from Louisa, Victoria, or shall I wrap up?
I just add to that, and sorry, I'm sure Victoria would say something similar, but I'd just add to, wherever possible, and, notwithstanding COVID, encourage colleagues to come to Manchester, because I think once they're in the city, no matter for how long they're here for, they get a true sense of what we're about, and it does dispel a lot of those myths that are still out there. Regardless of Manchester standing at as it is now. So yeah, just encourage people to come and experience a bit of what it's about.
I think I was just going to add the collaboration. I mean, that's not to be underestimated at all. Wherever we go in the world, we're always held up as an exemplar, because in some cities it can take you 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to even develop a network. And organisations like Pro Manchester are great at bringing people together and helping make those connections. Making those connections is fundamental to all of our success, and we succeed together as a team. And I think that's going to be absolutely crucial as we come out into recovery. It's going to be a hard job, and we will be more successful if we all collaborate and join together on a shared goal to bring even more growth to Manchester. And I think, once we get back into recovery, our growth will pick up where we left off. So that's what we all need to work together to do.
Great, and great final segue back to Pro Manchester, obviously the guys they organised this. So thank you very much for the panel session. Hope everybody found that useful, and I'll hand you back to Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you to the panel. Really, really interesting subject matter there, and fascinating as ever to hear from businesses on the front line and from James at very high altitude.